President Muhammadu Buhari to address United Nations General Assembly in New York today.
ECOWAS Commission assures Nigerian traders in Ghana of immediate intervention in the recent shutting down of over 400 shops.
"70 countries participate in the 6th Global Conference on Human Trafficking holding in Abuja.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on curbing the rising trend of cultism in Nigeria.
Cults are groups with secret beliefs that are most times hinged on extreme religious or social ideologies.
True, Karen, reports indicate that cultism in Nigeria as we know it today officially commenced in the 50s, but waned with time years after.
Now, in the 1990s, the activities of these clandestine groups gained momentum with reports of clashes and attacks on rival groups inundating the media.
And you recall that in the early days of cultism in Nigeria, their activities were carried out under the cover of darkness. But in recent times, we observe that many of these groups operate in the public glare.
And a majority of these clandestine groups who exist on university campuses and secondary schools such as Pirates, Confraternity, Aye, Black Axe, and so on across Nigeria have wreaked havoc on the academic community in the country. And Femi, I must inform us here that reports we have in the past has indicated that cultism has actually got into the streets, of Nigeria. And just like in some Latin American countries, especially Honduras, which has been described as the most deadly nation, in the world because of cultism activities. And this is part of what we're going to be looking at this morning.
We began to see traces of that in the 70s, particularly after Major General Olusegun Obasanjo, as at that time, became the head of state. And to occupy public office, you had to swear an oath that you were not a member of any cult.
Yes.
And so it started moving out of schools, even as far back as that. And apart from those in schools, the existence of other groups like Bajo, Dimba, Bakassi Boys, to mention just a few, has become public knowledge as a result of their activities on the street.
Many arrests have been made by the police over time. Among these is the arrest of a Badu ritual cult high priest in Ijebu-Ode of Ogun State early this year.
Individuals or groups caught in the act of cultism are expected to serve a 14-year jail term or serve time for whatever crimes they commit beyond their involvement in cult activities.
Security agencies are currently in a battle to curb the trend of cultism in the country, and this raises pertinent questions such as the reason for this rise and why these groups are attractive to almost all age groups in the Nigerian society. Who is responsible for this problem, and how can the country address this challenge?
And yes, these are the biting issues we shall be looking at. A team of experts will be joining us today to talk on them on Good Morning Nigeria today.
We are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest TV network, and of course from the capital city of Abuja. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Femi Okewo. I join Kirian in welcoming you to the program, in the course of which we shall be bringing you the usual companion segments like newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, let's join my colleague Ogwa Onyediba for the morning news.
Thank you, Femi. Good morning, Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in New York ahead of his address to the United Nations General Assembly this Tuesday. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that this is the fourth time the president will be addressing the world's largest diplomatic gathering since coming to power.
You don't have a global stage larger than the United Nations. So when a president can address the world through the United Nations platform, he better bring everything that is very important to him and to his country. But the significant thing for the Nigerian president this year is that he will not only be talking about Nigerian issues, he will be talking about ECOWAS issues, because he's chairman of ECOWAS, so everything that affects the sub-region, he can bring up at this global forum now. So those issues will continue to be talked about till we have progress made on them.
Meanwhile, wife of the president, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, who accompanied her husband to New York for the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly, will also be engaged with spouses of other world leaders on issues surrounding the need for the enhancement of the lives of women and children.
Not address in one of the very important sessions, which after Mr. President participation in the morning, in the evening she is going to also address the Congress on tuberculosis. She's also expected to be given an award by the Global Women Empowerment Movement here in the United States on her achievements on what she's doing in Nigeria.
And in a bid to stem the tide of human trafficking and migrant smuggling, global experts converge in Abuja to forge a common front against the menace. Francis Form reports that participants from about 70 countries are attending the conference.
Collaborative efforts of our relevant security agencies have resulted in several interceptions, arrests, and prosecution of traffickers and smugglers, which resulted in 359 convictions over time.
Nigeria remains steadfast in its commitment to address human trafficking and people smuggling, and I would like to commend the progress it has made in contributing to the Interpol Global Early Warning System.
And talking politics now, the All Progressives Congress APC Campaign Council for the 2018 Osun governorship election has described as excessive grandstanding the call by the PDP for INEC to declare its candidate in the polls as the winner. A statement signed by the chairman of the council's media committee, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, indicates that local and foreign observers have hailed INEC and the security agencies for a well-organized election and decried the PDP's descent into hysteria after INEC announced that the election was inconclusive, noting that rather than resort to threats, the PDP could either go to the court or decide not to participate in the supplementary election of September 27th. The council commended the people of Osun State for deepening the nation's democracy in an orderly manner all through the election process last Saturday and urged voters in the areas to be covered by the supplementary election to also ensure a peaceful process on Thursday. Well, ahead of the primaries of the All Progressives Congress APC, the national chairman of the party, Adams Oshomole, has declared that the party will not field candidates he described as opportunists who are seeking to use the platform of the party to achieve their selfish interest.
And brought-up politicians were given tickets to fly the flag of the party. It was when the national chairman was addressing members of the screening committee, citing the example of defection of the Senate President and the Speaker, House of Representatives. Meanwhile, the All Progressive Congress has stated that the vote-buying template introduced by the PDP and brazenly deployed in the Osun inconclusive election is an urgent threat to democracy and current efforts to ensure the sanctity of elections in the country. A statement signed by the party's acting National Publicity Secretary, Yekini Nabena, indicated that the aftermath of Saturday's inconclusive Osun State governorship election has confirmed the People's Democratic Party's desperate ploy to rig all coming elections, starting from the Osun State governorship election. The statement adds that PDP's public rigging method, particularly vote buying and dissemination of diversionary fake news, must be checked, calling on the electorate, civil society organizations and relevant stakeholders to speak out and resist the PDP's retrogressive plans, which threatens our democracy, reiterating that the people's will and vote is supreme and must be respected and defended. In the meantime, the presidential direct primary election of the All Progressive Congress, earlier scheduled for Tuesday, September 25, 2018, will now hold on Friday, September 28, 2018. A statement signed by the acting National Publicity Secretary of the party, Yekini Nabena, says the change in date is to avoid clash in dates with the Osun State governorship rerun election and to enable all registered party members in the 36 states and Federal Capital Territory to participate in the exercise.
And over to Yola, where Governor Muhammad Umar Jibrila has called on the people of Adamawa State to support the second-term bid of President Muhammadu Buhari for the restoration of peace and other developmental projects in the state. Rayanu Bala reports that the governor was interacting with APC delegates ahead of the party's primaries. And the Buhari Friends organization has called on the Akwa Ibom State youth to support the governorship ambition of Senator James Udodege in 2019 general elections. The event followed a solidarity rally for President Muhammadu Buhari held in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State.
We need a steady hand, an honest hand, all hands to the plow to return us to our vision and build on General Muhammadu Buhari's anti-corruption fight. The next 4 years of his presidency is crucial for Akwa Ibom State. You want to elect him again?
And still on politics, controversy surrounding the choice of venue for the People's Democratic Party's Special National Convention is still raging as the party inaugurated the convention committee. Timothy Yusuf reports that the governor of Delta State, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, is chairman of the committee. And away from that, the ECOWAS Commission has assured Nigerian traders in Ghana of immediate intervention in the recent shutting down of over 400 shops in Ghana, while reassuring that the ECOWAS Protocol on Free Movement and Trade in the West African sub-region will be adhered to in Ghana.
What I think we can do going forward is to ask for an emergency meeting between Ghana and Nigeria at which the other ECOWAS ministers will be present. Because if you look at ECOWAS's history, we've been able to solve our problems internally.
Well, that's the news for this morning. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Femi and Kirian after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Eshima. Mama. I'm out of food. Eshima. Thank you, Ma.
Amaka, ṣé wọ ni? Soap, orí, shea butter.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 3 Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
You in the air-conditioned office with the itchy throat. Strepsils. Girl in the spotlight with the raspy throat. Strepsils. You in the pollution. It's you. Dry throat. Strepsils. Hello in the downpour with the scratchy throat. Take Strepsils. Strepsils, with its soothing medicinal ingredients, will heal the harm done to your throat from external factors. Strepsils! Strepsils! Strepsils, for a dry, itchy, raspy, scratchy throat.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Cup Flu for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure, endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Use Dettol Skin Jelly, which protects against germs for a healthy, smooth skin every day.
Federal government releases over 22 billion naira for retirees in the former Nigerian Airways. Joy Uzo has all the details and more on Business News.
The federal government says it has released 22.68 billion naira for former Nigerian Airways staff. The Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, while making the disclosure at a meeting with retirees, said a committee has been set up with the Director Presidential Initiative on Continuous Audit, Mohammed Dikwa, as head, to verify the names on the existing list before any payment can be made.
The Union of the Nigerian Airways, thank you for your understanding, for your patience over these 14, 15 years. Despite the hardships you have gone through, you have actually indeed been very patient. Mr. President is concerned about your flight. That is why this process is being driven very, very quickly. I want to assure you that we will make our best efforts to make sure you are paid in the shortest possible period of time.
She added that another 20 billion naira has been approved for immediate release to public universities through the revitalization scheme to ensure smooth running of the tertiary system in the country. Meanwhile, the Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS has generated 12.66 billion naira in tax revenue about a month ago after it commenced the substitution of accounts of billionaire taxpayers. Executive Chairman of FIRS, Tunde Fowler, disclosed this over the weekend when he received the new Minister of Finance, Abuja Zainab Ahmed, in Abuja. Babatunde Fowler says FIRS wrote to all commercial banks in May of 2018 requesting for lists of companies, partnerships and enterprises with a bank turnover of 1 billion naira and above. The activity was aimed at ascertaining those companies that are compliant with tax laws and those that are not.
I want to also re-emphasize it, that the Nigerian banking system is healthy, it is resilient, and we as regulators, we are monitoring every move. If there is any little sign of distress, we will move in and take appropriate action.
And the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board has commenced the disbursement of the $200 million Nigerian Content Intervention Fund, which is fully managed by the Bank of Industry. The Executive Secretary, Simbi Wabuti, says the current board has received about 100 applications, while 3 companies, he says, have access to the fund. Wabuti made this known during the inauguration of the $10 million oil floating facility assets. Here are the closing figures of trades on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With that, we conclude business news. I'm Joy Uzo. Thanks for watching.
All right, thank you, Joy, for that package. Newspaper review is up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria. And already with us is newspaper reviewer Bayo Atuebi. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, as always.
Thank you, Femi Okeo. Good morning. Good morning, Kyrian. And good morning,
Thank you,
Nigeria.
For showing up again, as usual, on the newspaper review segment of Good Morning Nigeria. And let's go straight away to newspapers. We have about 6 of them here, and they're all having stories bordering on politics and other societal matters. And now I have the Daily Trust with me here. And below the nameplate of Daily Trust this morning, federal government releases 43 billion naira to defunct airways workers and universities. That's on page 3. Now, the main headline on the Daily Trust this morning is the kick about 2019 convention venue tears PDP organs apart. And the FRSU screens 300,000 applicants for 4,000 jobs. All right, and okay, that will do for the Daily Trust. And if I may conclude, sorry, Femi, with the authority newspapers. Above the nameplate, let's get some stories there. FRSC screens 300,000. We've read that in the other newspaper. That's the authority newspaper. Authority newspaper. Stop insulting us, Ohaneze tells IPOP. It's on page 4. Abuja Metro Line begins commercial train services on page 4. Gas flare. Federal government to stop IOCs from oil production is on page 13. And then the main headline on the authority newspaper is AGF, CJN clash over judges' annual vacation with 2 riders
Practice must be discontinued, says Malami. And then, no, we need it, says Justice Onogen. All right, now, below the photograph on the Authority newspaper, we have 2019 as Kika, Abga, Class 24 Guba aspirants. And then Oshun rerun, PDP lobbies or Missouri to support Adeleke.
And now, for the Punch, we go to the headline story, Oshun governorship rerun. Anti-Buhari coalition accuses INEC of releasing PVCs to government officials. Then they have riders such as present concrete proof, commission tells CUPP will challenge electoral body's decision in court. That's PDP. The lower part of the Punch front page, we have other political stories such as the protest rock INEC as Oyinlola asks umpire to declare Adeleke winner. And then we have other ones, convention, PDP leaders fight over venue. Also below that, we have primaries, Defense Minister Marafa Shinkafi tackle Yari, and that is in Zamfara State. So many political stories in the ones we have reviewed so far. So, Bayo?
Well, let's start with the good news coming from the retirees from the Nigerian Airways. Federal government has set up a committee to make sure that payments is effected of the 50% entitlement of former workers of the Nigerian Airways that the federal government has released, and that is for a sum of about 22.68 billion. The Minister of Finance said that a committee has been set up to ensure that transparent and disbursement of that entitlement is made to bona fide entitled persons and their next of kin. And another effort also has been made for in regards 20 billion that was also released following to meet the memorandum of understanding between the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Nigeria Universities that has been subsisting since 2013. So, good opportunity for them to smile. Talking about the judiciary now, what the paper reported there as a face-off between the Chief Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation relates to the 2 months vacation of judges, annual vacation. The Attorney General of the Federation has raised the issue that is contributing to delay in court cases. And the Chief Justice went out of convention to give a reply to that because he said it was the second time the Attorney General of the Federation was raising that issue. And he pointed out specifically that judges and lawyers were working hard day in, day out, and some of them were dropping dead until the 2-month vacation came to their rescue, and that the 2-month vacation has actually been a respite to the sudden death. The Chief Justice also used the occasion to enjoin the respect of the rule of law as a panacea for reducing corruption and injustices. He also pointed out, sadly, that some lawyers who were seeking to be awarded the silk, that is Senior Advocate of Nigeria, were allegedly involved in forging court judgments so as to attain that silk. And if you want to attain such honor, you should not be resort to that criminality. Meanwhile, political stories have dominated the scene, and it is not far-fetched. They are all coming from the Thursday supplementary election, which is coming from the inconclusive election that was declared by INEC. There are divisions. Lawyers and politicians are divided. Some argue that the election should be conclusive, and election a winner should have been declared. They argue that 2 previous elections were INEC cancelled some elections in some 2 elections, one in Bauchi and the other in which say was that. And in spite of that, in spite of the cancellation, INEC declared a winner. Why is this time? This time the situation is different, and the others are also arguing that in the case of Anambra, supplementary election was declared because there was dispute in Idemili North, Idemili South elections, and so they had to hold that supplementary election before that decision was reached. They also cite a subsisting case that the Supreme Court has ruled in the case of Falike versus INEC. And they cited that as a precedent, indicating that in that situation, there was the results of two local governments, the registered voters in two local governments, was higher than the margin of the first two candidates. And therefore, when they went to Supreme Court, the Supreme Court ruled that they have to read the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and the guideline of INEC together to reach a decision. So those are the precedents.
The guidelines of INEC.
The three of them has to be read together.
So far, this matter has returned to the court. And let's see if a pronouncement can be made between today and tomorrow, because the rerun actually is for Thursday. With the commencement of the new legal year, we expect so many judiciary or legal stories, and that's what we have had in most of the newspapers. Still in the front page of the Punch, your SAN rank can be withdrawn. The Punch, your SAN rank can be withdrawn. CJN warns lawyers, and that is a warning to ensure that they don't feel that it's their elevation is cast in stone. And now we also have other legal stories such as this, and we have it also on the editorial review. Let's see what Kieran has before we go to the editorial review.
Yes, before we go there, let's take some stories on the New Telegraph. Right. Well, PDP, that's below the nameplate. NWC, BOT disagree over convention venue. It's on page 4. I'm in love with money, says the man who kidnapped APC's chairman's son. It's on page 8. Angry workers protest, demand the minister's sack. Get that story on page 6. Now, the main story, the main headline on the New Telegraph, Ambode must face primaries. Two riders, GAC, sales governor's hope as last-minute efforts failed. Sanwo-Olu Hamzat to confront governor on Saturday's primaries. It's on page 2. Now, below the photograph here, tension in Osun over Goba rerun with some riders there. Bayo, please conclude as time is beckoning on us to drop this segment.
Quickly, National Assembly was due to resume today, but it's been postponed based on a statement issued by the clerk of the National Assembly. It's now to resume on October 9th. The other story is the sad story in Borno that ended well. A 4-year-old boy was taken by a lady from the school and taken to a hotel. They demanded from the father 20 million naira as ransom. The police encouraged the parents to pay, and the two conspirators were in Kano, and when they received the money, police nabbed them. And that is the story they are referring to, the lady saying that she likes money, and that is why she was dodging. A lady was the one that kidnapped the boy. Actually, it was a real kidnap, 4-year-old boy. When you take an adult, it's supposed to be an adult nap, not kidnap.
And now let's look at the editorial, and it's coming from Daily Independent. And it talks about dealing with frivolous ex parte court injunctions. Dealing with frivolous ex parte court injunctions. And let me take a part of it. In Nigeria, instances abound where ex parte orders have posed a lot of problems. In fact, in court cases, parties are entitled to notice and the opportunity to be heard. This is the basic reasoning behind the concept of due process, and everyone is entitled to it. However, available information reveals that there are exceptions to this rule. In the case of an emergency, perhaps there is the possibility of, where there is the possibility of immediate property destruction or extreme violence, a party can approach the court for an emergency protective and restraining order. Now, we see that these two go together. However, the reason for the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court's call is that these two areas have been abused. The one that is legitimate in terms of giving the other party a hearing, there are circumstances where the other party that is supposed to have a hearing plays delay tactics until the damage is caused. That is why some people approach the court with an ex parte application. But then it is due process for you to put the other party on notice.
I think I agree with you entirely, because ex parte motion is you file a motion and you require to hear the other party before it is granted. In the past, the other party was not heard and it was granted. And if you go through the administration of criminal justice, that has been taken care of. You are advised, except for every rule they say there is an exception, to hear the other party. Put it simply in Nigerian parlance, you can't shave a man's head in his absence.
Abayo, in fact, I'd like the analysis of Femi Okeo as a lawyer, yes. But I can assure you that this practice has been there for decades, and it's deliberate on the part of politicians and of course the lawyers. Yes. And now they are trying to review it and do the proper thing. Fine, let's see how it plays out. But
let's work towards reducing our preponderance of abuse of every situation.
Yes, because it has been used
even this one too can still be abused.
It has been used in the past to delay elections, and so that is why it's a cause for a panacea now.
Yes, and it shows that all sectors are contributing to making Nigeria better if certain things could be corrected. That's how we concluded this segment of newspaper review on Good Morning Nigeria for today, and of course we want to thank Bayo for, of course, coming as usual, and we hope to see him again tomorrow for more analysis on newspaper review. Now, we will take a short break. When we come back, we will go to the nitty-gritty of our conversation this morning, which is, of course, on cultism, not just in campuses, but, of course, in the streets of some Nigerian states.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Makes a Nigerian mom powerful.
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria. Junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18 The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
You
have no problem.
For the three put
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And now to put our conversation in perspective, let's join Dennis Adegunloye for this background report.
In its original meaning, cultism referred to a religion or religious sect generally considered to be extreme or false, with followers often living in an unconventional manner under the guidance of an authoritarian and charismatic leader. Followers often display an obsessive devotion to such leaders. Nowadays, cultism has retained its original meaning, but in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, the word has taken what some view as an even darker and disturbing dimension that has wider implications for the society. The general belief on the African continent is that cultism refers to a group of people with dangerous beliefs who are subjected to the undue and overwhelming influence of an individual. In addition, the secret element of cultism remains in the present-day understanding of the word, and the belief system or idea of a particular cult is known only to the inner members and is excessively admired and defended even to the point of dying for the cause. In the early 1990s, Nigeria witnessed a rise of cultist activity in tertiary institutions which resulted from socio-economic conflicts going as far back as the 1950s. Gradually, these cults constituted themselves into protection groups that fought for and advanced rights and privileges of their members. This, over the years, has however metamorphosed into intra- and inter-cult clashes which have negatively impacted life and learning in the tertiary institutions, and resulted in scores being killed or injured.
I think it's a thing that has to do with the mindset. You know, naturally, there are a lot of, more especially when it comes to the youth, they believe that if you want to be a hard guy or if you want to live a life like you want to live life to the fullest, you must belong to one fraternity or the other.
I think from home, the parents need to be vigilant on the children they are having, to notice the kind of friends the children bring home.
The federal government should create more jobs, vocational centers, and make all these street boys useful by engaging them in agricultural farming.
If you started in school, at the end of the day, you see that you won't graduate. You end up being an armed robber or something. There is nothing to gain from it.
Curbing the rising trend of cultist activities within and outside tertiary institutions will be the focus for guests on Good Morning Nigeria, who will look to proffer workable solutions to the menace.
Now, joining us in the studio is Professor Johnson Ayuba. Professor Ayuba is the Commissioner for Social Education Nasarawa as well. Jonathan, rather. Jonathan is the Commissioner for Social Education, Nasarawa State University. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. Also with us is Deputy Commissioner of Police and Force Public Relations Officer, Jimo Mushood. Jimo, thank you. Of course, you are now part of us on this program. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right.
And we have with us forensic social psychologist, Law Mefo. We're glad to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
We also have Chinonso Obasi. He is the former president of the National Association of Nigerian Students and currently the executive director, African Students Education Support Initiative. Chinonso, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Africa.
And joining us in our Kaduna Network Center is Abdul Audu. He is a former Dean, Students Affairs, Kaduna Polytechnic. He is a trained engineer and a principal lecturer who has been teaching for 27 years. Abdul Audu, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, you're all welcome to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, where we're going to tackle a very, very important issue concerning our social existence. Now, cultism has been there over time, and during the initial bantering between me and my colleague Femi, he recalled that in those days, people were compelled to take an oath that they didn't belong to any cult group before they were given appointment. And over time, it started with in the campuses of the different universities in Nigeria, but today has also been noticed that it's in the streets of Nigeria. And so that's why it's important for us to take on this very topic. And I'd like to go to forensic social psychologists here to actually let us know why this trend at this level of our development.
Oh, well, the issue of cultism in Nigeria has been there. It has only grown, escalated to a national concern, and mainly noticeable on campuses now. But it didn't actually originate from the campus. No, it's a societal problem. It has been there. You have many cults in the Nigerian society, many of them across board. And a lot of them wield a lot of influence and quite, dreaded, even revered in some circles in the country. I don't want to mention names. They are there. And you see, the coming of this practice into the university system in 1952, that was the first attempt, when the Sea Dogs came on, right? Then followed by Aye in 1960, and I think Buccaneers in 1972, and so on and so forth. You see, they all were trying to respond to what they felt was a kind of injustice they were trying to address. But you see, you don't solve a negative problem with a counter-negativity. So even from foundation, the idea of cultism on campus was faulty. Because if you check what they were after, use the case of Aye. Their insignia says, no peace, no love. So what can you achieve in absence of love and peace? But this is the driving process. And we have come this far because there are gaps, and nature abhors vacuum. Once you have gap, you have too much. You have too much laxity in the tertiary institutions, too much gap, to the point that students themselves find a lot of time on their hands, and they needed to have that filled up, and we haven't quite been able to respond as a society to the transition from adolescence to young adulthood that people populate the university system. Because by the time the average age to enter the university is about 18, 19. That is the expiration of adolescence and the onset of young adulthood, when the issue of identity, autonomy, independence, is yet to really take form. And how much of this is being addressed by the system? You know how much of that being addressed. The university system has left that gap to be there, and here is a group or groups that are sort of offering to fill that gap. They are promising security, they are promising protection, they are promising even financial upliftment. More importantly, they are offering to satisfy what you call psychological needs. The issue of self-esteem, which is seriously, a fueling factor. The issue of identity. They try to give you identity, a false one at that, trying to give you false self-esteem, and on and on and on. And you see, if you use this as a background, you can see that you are confronted with a problem that is festering because there is a conducive environment for it to grow, to germinate and then grow. And we haven't found the appropriate response to it. And it can only escalate. And again, because of its dangerous nature, it has religious implications. And in the era of religion, it's operating at what we call belief system. And when you get attitude down to belief, to change it becomes rather very difficult. That means even after passing through campus cult, you have to carry that into the wider society. That is even where there is major crisis. And from 1952 to date, that's 66 years ago. Those who started it then are even retirees now. That means over the years, they have grown out of campus to occupy all strata of society.
What is the Nigerian society complaining about now? You have identified that before 1952, it existed in our society.
Yes.
Was it acceptable as a concept in the Nigerian society, and that we are now complaining only because it has taken over our educational institutions?
I will say something in that regard. See, I have often believed that a majority of Nigerians are not genuine converts of either to Islam or Christianity. We are still in touch with African traditional religion, whether we like it or not. And this cultism has been or had been part and parcel of African traditional religion. Take, for instance, the masquerade cult. It performed certain social functions, yes. Like security, like enforcement, and so on and so forth. Those were their implications and applications then. So, but here we are confronted with another way of life, modernity, Christianity, Islam. Do you understand what I'm saying now? What we are now confronted, since we are not able to really transit into full Islam, into full Christianity, what we are facing now, if you ask me, is a clash of civilization, is crisis of culture. Because we are not fully converted, and we are not in practicing African traditional religion in its strict sense. So what we have now is a corrupted version of what should have been a better application of cult that obtained before the advent of Islam and Christianity.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for that analysis. And now we have a good background for what we're going to be talking about in the process of this program. But Femi, let's go to Kaduna and talk to Abdul Audu. Abdul Audu, we're coming to you at this point because you were Dean of Student Affairs during your time in the university, and that means you had direct contact. You had direct contact with students, some of whom perhaps maybe cultists. Now, what was your experience? Because this seems to have germinated in the universities, perhaps from the 70s, up to now. Before we start talking about being in the street. So what was your experience at that time with students?
Thank you very much. Just as the Prof said, the origin of cultism in Nigeria can be traced to the era which he mentioned. But in the present circumstances, what my experience is that in our campuses, the young men and women in the campuses came under intensive oppression by some staff of the tertiary institutions. And they have to look for a way out of seeking justice. Because in most cases, it is the general belief among students that no matter the complaint you take up, the colleagues of the person you are complaining against will never side you as a student. And at a point, some felt that it is important that they take their destiny into their hands by resorting to unconventional means of looking for justice. You will recall that in certain parts of Nigeria, certain tertiary institutions, initially they resorted to killing lecturers, dealing with other officers of the university or polytechnic system, and so on and so forth. But by and large, that issue of not providing what is needed, what the system should provide for the young Nigerian who is of that age, as just described by my presenter there, over the issue of cultism, has been a very serious matter for us. And the young people will want to transit into somebody who is recognized. That inability to get recognized will bring out the energy in them, and they then deploy their intellect to negative ends by trying to show that they have some level of power. I had cause to deal with members of AYE, Confraternity, Black Axe, and so on and so forth. But when you get deep down to discuss with these young people, you discover that they really have no serious reason for going to it other than they want to show off, they want to help others to attain justice. So they even cajole people who are not ready to be part of these obnoxious groupings to join them by promising them protection, by promising them good living, because they also go out of their way to get children of well-to-do parents to join them so that they can also bring money for them to fund their activities. So at the end of the day, they end up causing dislocations into the educational system, to the flow of education in our tertiary institutions. And in my own case here, in Kaduna Polytechnic, it was a huge success because there was tremendous cooperation from lecturers, from other colleagues, and from students themselves. And at the end of the day, a lot of converse came up and gave a lot of information that helped us to reduce. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you give the young ones what is their due, you will certainly get them off this particular system. Then our curricula for various courses need to be reviewed. We need to be more practical. We need to train them to be more engaged rather than this old-fashioned lecture system of the student is there and the lecturer is here. You go to most of our tertiary institutions, the interaction, the direct interaction between the teacher and student, or the learning and instruction process, is too far apart, that the lecturer is just very far away from the student. So that fatherly interaction is not there. That closeness that will make you to be able to talk to the young man, to understand his problem, understand what he's facing as a young person, is not there anymore. In fact, you go to some universities, you go to a lecture theater, you see up to 300 students in a lecture theater. There's no close contact between the student and the lecturer. Some students are even outside. They don't even know what is happening inside the class. You have some officers of the school system, like some deans, who don't even know what the students are facing in their hostels, in the clinics, and so on and so forth. So when these provisions that should make life bearable for students on campus are not there, the revolt comes in. And we have come to a level now that general rioting, as we experienced in the past, are no longer there. So the small groupings tend to use that gap, which government or the society has been able to reduce, to now come out and express themselves so that they can achieve certain aims. But by and large, they don't really get to achieve anything serious for themselves. So many of them don't get to pass out of the school system. They don't graduate. Some, even when they graduate, this attitude follows them to the larger society. and so on and so forth. So, and again, some parents don't know their children. I've had to deal with children that by the time I call their parents to tell them this is what your child is into, initially there's denial, but when they are faced with the reality of facts that you present before them, or when you invite them to talk to their children, they realize that the children had been in this system even before he left their houses for the tertiary institution.
So many valid areas you have opened up now, but let's take you back to where you started from. You seemed to have given some beautiful premise on which one could possibly understand why students went into those areas. For instance, the relationship between students and lecturers. But how do you relate that with what is now the contemporary issue? It's no more a situation between authorities and students. It is now a clear fight between student groups. What could they be trying to achieve now?
That's where I was going to. At a point now, some of these problems have been solved, especially with from 1986, when the Office of Deans of Student Affairs were created around tertiary institutions in Nigeria. In fact, when I was dean, there was a group we call Committee of Deans of Student Affairs and Heads of Security in Tertiary Institutions in Nigeria, where we could compare notes. Because there are people who are directly responsible to look at issues bothering students. That is, a student can directly come to you as a dean and complain about his problems, and you can directly relate with the head, the chief executive of the institution, to get the problem solved without delay. So some of these frictions have been reduced. Now, these young people have gone into these groupings over time. And they have seen that some people who were in this grouping in the past, just like Prof said, grew to become somebody in the society. And some of them who are lazy have this false belief that if you are in a cult group, it is very easy for you to attain prominence, attain fame, to get famous in the society. So, and on the campuses, they now cut territories for themselves in terms of social activities like having girlfriends and having social interactions and organizing events and so on and so forth. So the various groupings, the various cult groups will now want to be dominant. Each will want to be dominant, and that has brought about the group clashes that we were just talking about. Like at a point, the AA confraternity members will give me information about Black Acts. Black Acts will give me information about AA because they don't want the other group to exist. On my own part, when I was fighting so much, they even went ahead to report me to the police that I'm a cult member, because I didn't want to allow any other cult to exist on campus, and they said I must be a cult member myself, and my own group is existing. But name my group, they couldn't name my group. So what I'm trying to say is that the groups will always want to show this show of force. And this thing even transcends to student elections, both SUG elections, that's student union government elections on campuses, and up to NANS elections. There are times where we allow students to go for elections, national elections, whether National Association of Polytechnic Students or National Association of Nigerian Students. And they come back more dangerous than they had left our campuses to go there, because they go there, different groups will start fighting who to take control of NANS. And that was how, at the point, you had factional leadership in NANS. You have two presidents in NANS. You have two presidents in NAPS. Somebody will be one campus claiming to be president of NANS. Another person will be in another campus claiming to be president of NANS. And unfortunately for us, since the advent of democracy in 1999, some practitioners of politics tend to give some of these boys support, and they sponsor them because they need them to carry out some of these nefarious activities during elections. And because most of the guys who join cult groups are cowards, they will also have to go into something else to be able to attain the power that they need to carry out some of these nefarious activities. And what do they go into? They go into drugs to get intoxicated, because No ordinary person with his normal sense will go into the kind of things that some cult members do. So it's a very serious problem and a long process, and we need to talk to the leadership of the Nigerian society and also the children themselves, and we'll start from the home, let them know what is up. And then the lecturer in the university should have more interaction with the student and be fathers to them, and also help in looking into the changes that occur in the life of young people that are under your care. So those
Abdul, really, we have been able to share your experience, which is quite huge because you've interacted with these people, different groups, a number of times. Thank you very much. Let's also take a brief from that and see what we can do with this conversation as we progress. And Femi, you know, the most horrifying aspect of these organizations is the fact that they kill you brutally. Some even kill parents of members they couldn't get together. That's the most devastating aspect of these groupings. Now,
I don't know how this discussion can help arrive at the cause of things like that. That's such terrible
situation. Now, Professor Jonathan Ayuba, you're also in the school system, the commissioner rather of special education in Nasarawa State. In Nasarawa State. Now, what's your experience in respect of the issue of cultism in your state and schools in the state?
Can I just maybe make a bit of observation, really, to put it into proper historical context, because I think we are mixing a lot of issues here, because when you look at the background from our history in the pre-colonial times, the secret societies, their functions, and then we tend to mix them up with what is happening at the moment, because we have to isolate these two things first, because within our social setup, our religious setup in the pre-colonial period, even before Christianity or Islam, these are more regulatory bodies that controls the society. That is their functions. And now, when you put it within the context of what has started in the 1950s as confraternities, because we have to look at its origin, descent, about what was happening in the campus. Now, from descent to dissidence, this is the context we have to look at. And it is a reflection of what Nigeria is. You cannot isolate what is happening in the university with what is happening in Nigeria. As it evolves from a protest group within the university to more violent groups, so also Nigeria, because Nigeria has become dysfunctional. As we all said from the 1990s, the democratization of violence, that's how I look at it, and how it came into our campuses, how it has become even, we cannot isolate gangsters, cult groups, and their functions. So historically, we have to look at how it started and how from this descent, it has become a dissident kind of a movement that is becoming a problem. So if we look and put that into a proper context, then we will conclude that the dysfunctional system in Nigeria actually triggers, nurtured, feeds into this narrative. Now, within that, as my co-guest here has said in Kaduna, that sometimes, because the first thing we say is parents, and then typical in Nigerian scenario is that you pray first, and then when you pray and there's no answer, then you blame somebody. We have to start looking inwards, because the system has failed these children, because there is no link between our admission system in the university to the backgrounds of who we're admitting. We don't know who we're admitting. You just write your JAM, your WAEC or NECO, and then you get admitted. You see,
and yet when you graduate, you are supposed to have graduated both in character and in learning.
But the issue is that we don't, from the primary school to that early stage, to the secondary level, up to the university level, you don't have any kind of a consistent record of that child. his mental health, because some of these issues are mental health issues. Some of these issues are because the government has failed in its responsibility. Because, for example, when you look at in the academics, but the university in which I said that's a mini Nigeria, the vice chancellor being the president, unquote, gives academic leadership. And then you politicize the appointment of a vice chancellor. You have somebody that doesn't even understand the system. So there is corruption within that system. There is no academic leadership. Now, you admit students, your capacity is 200, then you admit 1,500. You don't have personal one-on-one contact with your students. You don't even understand their background, because sometimes when you talk to them, you can detect these problems that you can actually resolve at this early stage. You don't have hostel facilities, and then they are now confined to many mini ghettos around the campuses.
Yes, Professor Yuba, you know, you've spoken so well, you know, because we have already established how it crept into the university. That has been established, as you're also trying to illustrate. But it is important now for us now to talk about where it exists and how to tackle it, right? So, because the perspective you are bringing in, yes, very important, just as our man there in Kaduna did. So, let's narrow it to a point where we now begin to identify, you know, some of the approaches necessary to tackle it.
Now, there should be a synergy at early stage between health services and schools. Because once you start studying these children from secondary school, you have counseling, you have this issue of mentorship, and you have records of behaviors which cannot be transmitted to the universities they go in, because when they come into the university, they come in with just blank pages without this background. And this will go a long way, because firstly, if you don't understand who you are admitting, then there is this issue of problem. So I think there should be a way in which there will be a synergy between health services and educational services at early stage, so that you start monitoring as they come in. And also, we should restrict the number of students we are admitting, because sometimes that creates this room and gives this prominence in which we have issues with cultism in our schools.
Okay, well, while we're still going around our guests to set the stage, Jimoh Moshood will come to you last, because after all the mess have been created, we always run to the police to help us tidy up the mess. We're still looking at the mess, and then we'll go to a former president of the National Association of Nigerian Students, Chinonso Obasi. You were at the peak of students' unionism for you to become president. So not just as a unionist, but as a student who interacted with fellow students, how did this principle fester? How did it become something that it became fashionable on campuses?
Well, cultism, as we speak today, when we focus more on tertiary institution, is as good as we are not conversant with the present-day society. I think cultism is even more in the secondary level presently than even in the tertiary institution. Let me put my mind backwards to 2005, when I finished from Federal Government College, Ogbose, as a secondary school leaver. And we were all celebrating that we are going into the tertiary institution. Some of my classmates who were brilliant and they were performing, part of the questions that were coming to our mind is, as we are living here, which court group will we join when we enter the tertiary institution? That we heard that those who are in court are very, very powerful and nobody can intimidate them. So what am I trying to say? Cultism did not start, is not as much as it is in the tertiary institution as we think.
Possibly having experienced so much seniority in secondary school. There was seniority, there were seniors intimidated. So you needed to get out of that intimidation.
Exactly. Exactly. So when you get into the tertiary institution, the present-day tertiary institution that we have is not providing the German or the real society where students can be free to express their feelings, just as our co-guest in Kaduna rightly said. You cannot, as an institution, boast of students' character when they live or when they have found themselves in an atmosphere that is not even conducive. A lot of our institution does not even have the database of students, especially the security units. For this menace to get to a stop, we need to monitor very well the inflow and outflow of people who come into campuses. Some of these students get involved in this act not because they know what the implications are. The school management and authorities do not invest in capacity building workshops. When you have things like freshers, what they call freshers summit, for those who just gain admission, it's just about 20 minutes or 30 minutes audience that they just have to fulfill righteousness that they have given the new students orientation. It should be a weekly, a quarterly, a time-to-time awareness to tell the students what the implication of cultism is. And most importantly, why it seems that cultism is escalating so well presently in our society, apart from the institution, is simply because one of the most lucrative jobs that we find ourselves in Nigeria today cannot do without the cultists, which is politics. I think politics have become one of the highest paid jobs and an adventure that everybody wants to venture into. And those who already found themselves in do not wish to come out of it. And the politicians, as per se, they believe so well that for their ambitions and anything they want to carry out to get to its actualization, they need the handwork of these cultists. They are the ones who equip them with the arms they use. And after election, they don't have the infantry or the guards to retrieve it back from them. And when you don't satisfy the crowd that you have used to win election, then you go into robbery. It is this cultism, it is the aftermath actions of this cultists that is becoming scary in the society today, simply because the aims and the objective of the founders of these groups have been defeated. And it seems because the hierarchy or the leadership of those who founded it is no longer in control of the system. Because I am very much aware that, as we also told, that this cultism was not primarily formed by the founders to intimidate people, but it was found to make people to fight against injustice and intimidation. So right now, if the members are now the one intimidating those they should protect, that means something is wrong somewhere.
Yeah, so really something is wrong. And that turns us to Jimo Moshood. We know that some arrests have been made by the law enforcement agencies at different locations, at different times, in different parts of the country. Right. Now, cultists being prosecuted, if yes, how many of them have been jailed based on their cultic activities? Because they are into killing, they are into open day robbery, they are into intimidation. They use a word, they say show love, right? And that show love is by force and is in the broad daylight. So let's share your own experience.
Thank you so much. I want to first of all start by saying that we make quite a number of arrests across the country on cultism, and it would be difficult for me to sit down here and tell you the actual figure. Before entering here, I called two commissioners of police who are cultism endemic. And why the endemic is that from the two prof and other contributors say that this in data even before the independence from the colonial period. And those states that are the secret society cultism are endemic still have the number very high of people who go to cultism because the society around there permit or support willingly or willingly activities of cultism. Like I spoke with the Commissioner of Police, I don't want to mention state, 14 suspects were just arrested yesterday. And firearms numbering about 5 were recovered from them, and we are processing them for prosecution. The law itself is not a problem. It's enforcement that's the issue because it takes a lot of team for you to get a suspect to court, especially under cultism. The belonging to secret society or cultism attracting is in the penal code, the statute, the penal code, the criminal code are very explicit about it. And you can either get 7 years or 14 years imprisonment, as the case may be. But the judge or the magistrate had the discretion to either give you the maximum punishment or minimal punishment. And that is why they broadened their tentacle to ensure that those who are court group, they are not people of poor background. They are not. Definitely they are not. They are people that tends to mobilize membership from people in public office across board, whether in the security sectors, whether in the judiciary, whether in the civil service and things like that. So that at the goal, when you arrange them in courts, they get lesser what they call a punishment for it. But of late, I think the National Assembly have done significantly very well by coming up with a law which is prevention of courtesans in the country. And so many states have equally adopted this. But the bottom line is that while we're arresting them, it doesn't put stop to these activities. And that is why we have set an action plan in motion. The Inspector General of Police, IGP Ibrahim Puchu Idris and I have put an action plan. One of the action plan is to get a group, like we did in Kogi last year, hundreds of courtists, renowned courtists in the state, because the state government equally supported us in the initiatives. So this group are working within the campus to ensure that people who are identified to be court group are appealed upon to renounce and surrender their harm. But the fact still remains that courtesans, you can't dissociate courtesan from thuggery, like the former NANS president have pointed out. And you cannot dissociate courtesan from major crime that have been committed. Because if you take 10 suspects arrested, 7 to 8 are cultists themselves. I had the opportunity to supervise the election of NANS around 2010 in Abuja here. And you discover that even those who are supposed to have graduated from the university 6-7 years ago, you can imagine somebody that contested in 2010 or part of the student union government of a school will still be contesting in 2018. So how many years does he have to be in the university? That means the entry process, there's a lot of flaws and problems. And if from traditions in the early 60s, 70s, you don't want the police to be within the campus, police should play a major role in screening of your students. Other countries across the world, university, if you want to go to foreign university, you have to come for character certificate from the Nigerian police force. We check your background. And the same thing should be done in this country. If you are saying that there's freedom in the university, we know no doubt, because that is part of the joy of somebody leaving secondary school, that you are going to limitless freedom. And when you go to an area that is, you have limitless freedom, you do all kinds of things that you want to do. You equally prevented those who have genuine reason to be able to learn. So now you have those who have graduated from that school, who are even lecturers in that school, that are court members. They are there. And you, if VC, for example, is to be interviewed by the boards that are selecting Vice Chancellor, they should let us, the board, know what are your plans to be able to stem the tide of courts or court activities in your university. Once you don't have that plan, because and even your premises here at the NTA, if you don't have access restriction, then it will be all for all comers. But passing the exam can be circumvented. Somebody can go through so many processes to pass the exam. But when you do character evaluations and profiling, you'll be able to know those who deserve to be there. Then parents mostly have to exercise a lot of caution and restraint, because most of these activities are sponsored by parents. They watch their children graduating from one level, because if, for example, you have not committed a minor crime, nobody can contract you to go and kill somebody, because definitely you are going to fail. Then you look for somebody that have killed before you cannot tell him that you want somebody to be eliminated. So when we watch, this does not mean that in the larger society, like the former NAS president pointed out, that even mechanic, carpenter is so rampant, they say. Mechanic, carpenter, artisans generally are into court activities. So we have to bring out a holistic approach of dealing with it. Not that the police is saying that we should be on campus, no. But even the people you employ as security personnel of the campus should be people, I want to play sentiment here, because the police work with all kinds of crime and criminalities. Should be people that have orientation in policing. Probably mostly retired police officer. But when you bring people in from the other services that doesn't even know the early warning signal, that you're supposed to watch out for before you have a rampage of courts in the university, then you may not be able to answer the question. Because we have in the past where courts call convention across university. In one of the universities, I don't want to mention name, for all the courts in the country to assemble there in broad daylight. And what are the security architecture in that university? What are they watching? What are the early warning signals? What are the intelligence they have gathered? So by and large, the parents, the government, the school authority have a very serious role to stem this down. Then the politicians. I make reference during one of your programs that the governor of the state said, look, Commissioner of Police, Security Agency, if you identify any member of my cabinet that seems to continue, be bold to let me know. I will really search for you. But that's to a large extent the lip service, because it is well known that some of them are even member of House of Assembly in those states. So now you'll be treating the symptom, but you are not treating the cause of the illness. So people should know that before you bring out your child for even writing jam, you need a lot of background check. Policing should be part of preventing courts and court groups.
Before you drop, please, just for you to make some more comments on this. Now, you pointed out that artisans, mechanics, vulcanizers, and all of youths in different subsectors, of the economy that are involved. What should police be doing? Because you are now aware that it happens, and I can tell you from reports that in some local communities in the Abuja here, especially when there are commercial activities, these guys operate there because, of course, they task people to fund them deliberately in the open day light, and when some of them are arrested, they're released in about a week or so. They're back again, in those communities. So, what should police be doing, having this knowledge?
We are doing a lot, and we are improving on it. But it's not our fault if you see a suspect back on the street. We are not even happy about that. But we can't go beyond that. We can't go into any extrajudicial action because the stakeholder in the criminal justice system, all of us have responsibility. And that's why I told you earlier that they've infiltrated the sectors. Because if you charge somebody to court now, and that is why the Inspector General of Police have directed that, you charge for the higher offenses. If somebody has killed another person, you don't charge him ordinarily for belonging to a secret society or going armed. You charge him for murder. And that process takes a long, it's capital offense. And certainly, when you prove your case properly in court, such an individual will be remanded in prison custody. But you'll be surprised that when the matter is adjourned and the matter comes for adjournment, the person is granted bail because the judge had the discretion to do well with that. So if any parent on his own is trying to shield the child, even after committing an offense, you are not doing any good to such a child. Because in the future, we have had incidences that even people who have become business magnates, they have become chief executive, are still being haunted. And some of them are being killed for the previous action they have carried out in the university. You have seen people who have even come into the media that are previous courtesans and attacking the integrity of senior government officials and equally people that are trying to say, no, this society must go right. They are everywhere. So the bottom line is that the enforcement of the law, it rests on our responsibility, on our shoulder when it comes to criminal law. But all other stakeholders in the criminal justice system, so that the bar and the benches should see the need that this thing is becoming widespread and it can consume everybody. Right. And those equally, the stakeholder, the politician, I don't mean politicians generally, those who have mischievous intention for employing this guy to unleash mayor. Because when you want to win an election, for example, there are 3 stages: the pre-election, the election proper, and the post-election. So by the time you are going around the country, or you are going around the state or your constituency, and you don't see that impact of compelling people by force, because Nigerian politics, date back before even independent, has been violent. So they should join us in ensuring that courtism is stamped out.
We'll pause you here. We'll return to you if you have time to do that. And you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and the topic is courtism in our society. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we will continue with the conversation. Please don't go away.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back, and we are still discussing the menace of cultism in the Nigerian society. Tweets are already coming in, and we'll take just a little that have come in and then go back to the issues. We have one that says a lot of people are into cultism because of social pressures, and they just want to belong. Dele Jack Solomon also says the menace of cultism in the Nigerian school system, federal, state, and private-owned universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, and even secondary schools cannot be undermined. It is a monster which is ravaging effect, leaving behind its tale of war, loss of lives of would-be leaders, disruption of academic calendar, rape, wanton destruction of school property, waste of resources, loss of hope and aspiration, blackmail, threats, kidnapping, armed robbery, prostitution, drug abuse, excessive consumption of alcohol. We must stop it.
All right, from Festus Akimboyewa, thank you, NTA, for raising this discussion on cultism that's ravaging our higher institutions and communities. Awareness and adequate funding of our education and infrastructure, especially in our higher institutions, will help to curb the menace.
Chris Simon says, cultism is like poison. It destroys the mind, vision, and thoughts of youth. It also kills the potential that has been deposited inside the youth's mind.
Okay, Victor Oyosumo, I said the incidence of cultism in Nigeria is alarming and almost becoming a culture. It's both in the society and in our schools. We need to overhaul our value system and stop glorifying cult members. The security agencies cannot do much as it has eaten deep into our institutions.
Yeah, when we talk about it eating deep into institutions, it's possibly from all the submissions we have had. It has eaten deep into the society too. And someone who also combines a vision of the society generally and a vision of institutions is Commissioner for Special Education in Nasarawa State, Professor Jonathan Ayuba. Again, I remember when you took up this topic, you talked about the societal influence. But is there a way that the school system can be shielded from the society in the sense of the cultist feeling that he has an approval by society?
You see, it's quite difficult, really, to isolate, to immune the university system because we're part of the society once you go into the university, that doesn't mean that you are out of...
There are special structures in institutions. That's
Yes.
why I asked that question. Not universities alone,
Yeah.
polytechnic, primary schools. There are special structures. There are limits to freedom, if you allow me to use that, in these institutions. That's why I thought that institutions could come up with something.
Yes, it's still the same. We're still talking and then going around in circles, really, because when you talk about discipline, this is the key thing in the institutions. But discipline cannot only be maintained by the institutions, because you need support of the parents from the outside. Because if you have this air of arrogance that whatever you do, at the end of the day, it's of no consequence, because the issue of punishment in Nigerian system now, the reward and punishment system does not exist. You reward somebody for bad behavior, and then once the parents will come, oh, this and that, and then the defense will now come in. So you see, you cannot isolate the two, because the system within the institutions from the primary school have had this disciplinary measures on how to control behavior, because that's why you have to dress in primary school in a certain way. You have to go for a meal at a specific time.
Yes.
So, but in a situation that parents now began to get involved, once your son is suspended, you're coming to defense. Sometimes you sue the school because it was not done the right way. But we should not lose hope, really, because we have to go back, because it has not been much problems in the 60s because the discipline was there. But it's the same story we're saying, because the facility, the structure was there to support. But also the important thing, I think, is it's not everybody that must go to school, because sometimes the pressure, our school system is you have to go get a certificate, but we don't actually study the kids. Will this be fit for the academics, crafts, and what are the needs of the Nigerian society in terms of manpower and how to develop them?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Prof. And let's return to Law Mefo, who is a forensic social psychologist. Law, you, in your initial comments, traced the origin of this even from before the colonial era, because of the masquerade cults and all of that, which then was designed to also correct society. And Chinonso also mentioned a similar thing, where when he indicated that the people who brought that into campus in those days were actually meant to fight injustice in the school system and elsewhere. Now, what do you think would be the solution? An activity that started based on the established fact that they should fight injustice, and now has become very, very inimical to society growth. A tool of injustice itself, yes.
Well, you see, I differ, fundamentally with that claim that the origin of cultism was justified. It wasn't justified, it wasn't justifiable then, and it is not now. It has only escalated. It's the same thing that has been there over the years. If indeed the origin and the meaning of cultism could be justified, the initial three should be models for cultism on campus. We want to see a pirate confraternity that demonstrates exactly what that ought to be. Aye and the Vikings that came, first, second, third, right? They are all the same. Now, and those who are also talking about cults as vehicles for fight for justice, I also fault them, because the university system has students' unionism. And that is the platform where you articulate your problems as students and fight for whatever justice, fight for whatever correction. Once you move it to the platform of cultism, you are addressing a different issue altogether. And that is why I said that the problem is the psychological needs that they try to see if they can solve, right? First, I talked about identity problem. I talked about false promises, false hope, false promise for defense, and you also could say the counter, violence between cult groups on campus. It's obvious. When you kill, you don't expect to take a walk. There will be counter-killing. And if there's counter-killing, there will be counter-killing. And if, the vicious circle, gets there, that's the problem. Then you want the solution? Let me tell you, the university can develop, zero tolerance for cultism. It is not true that cultism is meant to fight for any justice. The students' unionism is the instrument designed legally, justifiably, for articulation of the problems of students. At the point of entry, apart from the screening that have been, that has been prescribed here by some of my colleagues, at the point of entry, I expect that the students will not only be screened, they should be made to sign commitment, forms, a kind of declaration, a kind of agreement that you will not go into court, and that if you do, you accept by this declaration to be expelled and persecuted. That is one level. You need to look at the issue of mentoring, like Professor Iba said, very important. And it is possible in schools. Yes, I know that the universities are overpopulated, tertiary institutions generally, but we can still do something about that. At departmental levels, it's possible to reach out to students. And mentoring and teaching are not exactly the same thing. Mentoring is a helping, interpersonal relationship between a mentor and a mentee. It's possible, it is inevitable on campus. A bit of it is there, but it has to be systematized. We have to get this really going. And more importantly, you see, we have condoned cultism in schools, off schools. We have condoned, and unless we demonstrate the will to deal with it, it will never go away. Let me give you an example. They used to answer secret courts, right? But it's no longer secret court. They are out there in the open. Move around the streets of Nigeria. You will see cultists in regalias, carrying dangerous, gogels, machetes, axe, battle axe, the kind of sword you've never seen before. AK-47 in broad daylight. There is no law that allows that in Nigeria. Do you understand what I'm saying? No law allows that in Nigeria, but we allow it. So, small segments of them now occupy the campuses as overlords, intimidating lecturers, raping, maiming, and killing students without consequence. We want to say that any identified cultist is expelled and prosecuted. And finally, my brother, just the last line. Beyond this, it's very, very important that you and I take interest in this. There is need for government to see this as a national emergency and come out with a way of dealing with it once and for all.
You're very correct, and that's why the Nigerian Television Authority takes it very seriously. It's a serious issue as far as this organization is concerned. Chinonso, the buck passes back to the society generally. We don't want to paint a picture of hopelessness, but when the society itself seems to be failing, what do you want? How can we stem this? Because everybody's suggestion now, yes, we have talked about how the school system should be able to deal with it, how the law enforcement system should be able to deal with it. And just to take the last word of law, the Nigerian society should see it as an emergency. But the Nigerian society is the same society that bends the rule and gives favor to people based on their personalities and their connections. Of course, the cultist too thinks that he's connected enough for a waiver.
Well, the truth of the matter is this. Just as my colleague in Kaduna rightly said, the cult groups sometimes fight for superiority. And in fight of this who is superior to each other, gets this aftermath effect to the society. It is important that we justify the aim of establishing academic environment. It is not just to gain certificate, but to model the character of a child. And if there is day-to-day check on these students, it is going to go a long way to make sure that institutions know the activity of every student. And by the impact that the society is feeling, the society on their own must be proud enough and be energetic enough to report any situation, just like the first PPRO rightly said. You cannot arrest anybody because he's a cultist, but you can arrest somebody because of the actions he has performed. If somebody have killed, arrest and prosecute the person as a murderer. If somebody have stolen, the person must be treated as a thief. Take a look at it. Even in the society today, we are focusing mostly on the students. Most of these lecturers were one-time students. They grew from being a student and who was one-time cultist, and they're also lecturers today. Therefore, they are also the ones sponsoring a lot of things amongst the student community. So there is need that interaction between the students and the school environment is cordial, so that we know the day-to-day and the security agencies. And there is also importance that some of these persons that the school management or the security agencies know them as being members of cult group, they can use them to catch those who are also in it by employing them and putting them into the system. Look, students are more afraid of their colleagues than authorities.
Okay, thank you. Thank you there. Gentlemen, I think we've been able to delve into the intricacies of cultism in this country as much as time can allow us to do. We're still having some tweets from Nigerians who are really keenly interested in this conversation. But before that, let's give a Mushood just 30 seconds to say what we want to say.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate this. I want to correct a little thing so that our viewer wouldn't have a different impression. What I said is in the prosecution. The police have the right to arrest anybody identified as cultist or perceived to be cultist or secret society. Yes. No, what we make to aided prosecution is that outside charging you for belonging to a secret society or a cultist group, we still charge you for this specific offense, which carry
all right, let's go to the tweets now. Dela Jack Solomon says, cultism in Nigeria has no doubt taken a new trend as it has relocated from tertiary institutions and campuses where it hitherto held sway to the streets in various communities across the country. Security agencies must rise up to the occasion to nip it in the bud. This menace is eating into our society.
Cecilia Okoroma tweets, most parents are not doing their job, hence the rising trend of cultism in Nigeria and obscene pictures we see on social media.
Chris Simeon, the rising number of armed bandits, area boys, hoodlums, and other forms of criminality in the society is as a result of cultism, especially at the tertiary institutions and post-primary.
To stem this tide, Delejak Solomon tweets, the political ruling class needs to mop up the step up the courage and iron political will to reverse the trend. The government ought to initiate attacks on the conditions that breed cultism.
Now, Akin Sada, value redefinition and reorientation should be considered through systematization of structures and the processes, as well as providing acceptable avenues of satisfying fundamental psychological needs that can tackle cultism.
And another one from Delejak Solomon, the most important factor is that parents and guardians should teach their children and words the fear of God. They should inculcate this in them at the early stage. This will prevent them from being manipulated by bad persons who will want to use them for their selfish interests.
Now, Thomas Neutron, cultism in Nigeria has gone beyond students on campuses. We have today's most dangerous cultists among bike riders, businessmen, police, army, politicians, and so forth. The government should declare a capital sanctioning on cultism at all levels. So that's by way of course, criminalizing it and making it be like a terrorist group. Nobody should belong to a cultist. I think that's what
the law already has said that. You can be arrested for being a cultist. Simple. Right. Yeah. Then the action then can also come as part of it. Then Sunday Ian, good morning to you. He says, cultism has gone beyond campuses as our politicians groom them now in the streets, especially here in our Niger Delta. If a cultist is arrested within few hours, he will be released by those that matter.
All right, and we have Chris Simeon. Chris Simeon has two here, but we'll just read one and round off this program. To parents, it's not just about giving birth to a battalion of children, but take time to train them, nourish them in the way of the Lord, feed them with the divine words from the holy books. But of course, you know that in Nigeria,
it says evil communication corrupts good manners. Parents, monitor your children.
Almost in every street of Nigeria, we have churches and mosques. So if prayers could have done that, we would have been able to do that by now. All right. Thank you for staying with us up to this moment that we're about to round off this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We will start by appreciating our guests who made it possible for us to do an implicit analysis of this very topic. I'd like to say thank you to Professor Jonathan Ayuba, Commissioner for Special Education, Nasarawa State. Thank you for coming all the way from Nasarawa State. And also, Juma Mushud, of course, Juma Mushud is becoming part of this program every day because most of our topics, they all have security implications. Jimo, thank you for coming once again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you
and my lecturer, you know, he's here this morning and he really gave it to us the way we needed it in terms of background information about cultism in Nigeria. Forensic social psychologist, Law Mefo. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The Chinonso Obasi, the former president of NANS, I'm sure you don't want to do that job again. No, you know, all right. We will also thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And all the way from Kaduna, the man who really had it hard with the students when he was their dean. I want to appreciate you for giving us an insight into what it means to be a dean of student affairs. We'd like to thank you for coming. Abdul Audu, the former dean, students affairs, Kaduna Polytechnics. Thank you for your contribution this morning. All right, and that's how we conclude this edition. And before that, it's time for sports. Well, of course, the sports is not ready, so let's go to foreign news now.
Anti-apartheid hero and first democratically elected South African President Nelson Mandela has been honored at the United Nations General Assembly with a statue erected in the UN headquarters. Over 150 speakers participated in the Peace Summit held in honor of Mandela, where the global icon's role in fighting for justice and peace around the world was recognized. The 1.9-meter statue of Mandela with arms outstretched at the UN building in New York makes it the first time the statue of a person will be in the United Nations headquarters. Now, elsewhere, aid groups have been forced to halt Ebola prevention activities due to violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo's restive east that claimed the lives of 21 people. The Congolese army has blamed the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a notorious rebel militia, for the bloodshed which occurred in Beni, a flashpoint city in the North Kivu region. The Norwegian Refugee Council said it and other aid agencies had been forced to temporarily suspend activities in Beni because of the attack.
Now to sports. Luka Modric wins FIFA Best Player Award ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo, and Mohamed Salah bags Best Goal of the Season award.